Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Heist episode 158. In this episode, we go more in depth into Mohamed's recent trip to Tunisia, the perspective that it gave him, what he felt about the country being back after a few years, etc. And then we also went on a bit of a tangent talking about how we used to be in terms of holding more black and white opinions, having less nuance when we were younger, basically, and how we've changed over time and how it's natural that that happens as you get older and why it happens in the first place. So I think it's a really good classic kind of episode. I just want to mention before we get started that my book is finally available for purchase. So I will drop a link for that in the description everywhere on YouTube and the podcast places. And the book, by the way, is a Muslim man's guide to being a man, according to the Quran and Sunnah and the sources that we have as Muslims. And it's just to answer all the key questions that you might have as a man. So check it out. It's actually free and you just pay for the shipping. So jump on that as soon as possible. Assalamu alaikum. Enjoy. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, Mohamed?
I've got the wipes.
Is this child related?
Could be. Or it could be like an emotional one. Maybe we're going to cry a lot this episode. And I've just got to wipe my tears away. Alhamdulillah. How are things?
Good, man. The weather's good. I just came from the park, took my son to the park.
Oh,
Let him run around.
such a dad.
It's good, bro. I feel like I have to do those things. I mean, what I mean by that is no one else going to do it.
Yeah, of course.
Like, I mean, my wife did that before, but, with new baby, obviously that's not going to happen now. I guess she could do it later, but I just feel like, it's an outdoors thing, let me do it. And I try to like challenge him when I take him and, get him to do things he doesn't really want to do and stuff like that.
Wow. You really are a dictator in the household. You know what, though? Seeing that, it's important to take advantage of the time you do have, because I realized a lot of the time I'd always say, oh, if I couldn't do something, for example, such as that, I would always say, oh, when I have a bit more time, I'll do it. Or when my calendar's a bit more empty, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Not realizing that kids just accelerate really quickly. And before you know it, they're just not interested in you anymore. So you want to capitalize on the time when they're still young. Because when it may be that when you do have time, they've already kind of grown out of that kind of activity and they'd rather do something else.
Yeah, actually, that is true, man. And it's a typical thing. You say you'll do it, and then before you know it, like 6 months is gone or 1 year is gone, and that's quite a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's quite a long time, like in terms of a child's development. And you can do a lot, like not just when it comes to parenting, but you can do a lot in 6 months if you do like a little bit every day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you shouldn't discount it, really. What I wanted to talk about in this episode, a quick episode, is I just wanted to get like a bit deeper into like your trip to Tunisia and stuff, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, because we just brushed over it a bit last episode. So obviously your dad's from Tunisia. When was the last time you went there?
Pre-corona. I want to say 2018.
Okay, not too long ago then.
Yeah, but still, you know what? It's surprising how quickly that happened, because I was checking my photos and stuff to try and figure out when I was last there. That's just the way to do it these days. Yeah, 2018, I was like, subhanAllah, 4 years since I'd last been. And I was obviously used to going every year. But yeah, it just, it's weird, bro. It's a weird, it's just a weird vibe, a very weird vibe. But you know what? Like, I went there this time, and obviously it's no secret to anyone on the Mind Heist podcast. I went there with a bit more sort of vision of, okay, what would it be like if I actually lived here, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Although I did that, I made that trip quote unquote on my own in the sense, because it would have been better to have my wife and kids with me to then see how living there would be. But no, that's the thing. I was kind of ready I was open to Allah to give me the guidance necessary, whether I should do it, whether I should not. I was feeling the vibe. And I came back with quite a positive vibe. So I'm still going to, bi'idhnillah, keep that in my trajectory and see how things go. trying to think of more specifics though. So
Where do you fly from? Is it London? Yeah, I guess.
I actually flew from Gatwick.
Yeah.
But then when I came back, I landed in Heathrow.
Oh, Gatwick's closest to you, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like,
And what's the flight? It's like 4 hours or 5?
no, it's about 2.5, I think, on average.
Oh,
Something
like that, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a
You
bit
fly
less,
over France, Spain, and then over the Mediterranean. That's 2.5 hours. Yeah, okay. I guess it makes sense. Like Turkey is like 4 hours, so yeah, I guess that
Pretty
makes
sure it is. I did take a screenshot earlier because I was looking at more flights in case I go again. But the prices are so expensive now that you've got like a whole family. Oh yeah, 3 hours, 2 hours and 45. Yeah, that's what some of them are. Yeah, but it's just so expensive. Like the bigger your family gets, the more
Of course,
the
yeah.
more expensive it is. And then on top of that, you've got obviously the price fluctuation. That's one thing that should be illegal, man. These price fluctuations for no reason. I'm sure you find that.
What do you mean by the fluctuation?
So
You
like
mean during
they know that
holidays,
like
or?
yeah, they know that during holidays they can get more money, so they'll charge more. It's just like why? It's the same flight. It's not like the atmosphere has changed, you know.
Yeah.
So it's honestly some of it is daylight robbery, really. I could appreciate maybe flights changing based on like fuel costs and that kind of thing.
Well, it's demand, I guess.
Yeah, there's that as well. Yeah.
Like when there's demand, people are willing to pay more. Like they're happy to pay more, if you like. Well, some are happy. Some are just willing to pay more because that's the only time they can go. But also, I would imagine that outside of those holiday times, the flights are like quite empty and they're making a loss. So, I mean, like airlines in general, they always like go bankrupt in it. So, I
feel like it should be some alleviation though for those national sort of airlines. So like, you know, Tunisia's got Tunis Air. You've got.
You mean it should be subsidized?
Yeah, it should be subsidized for those ones that are like.
I mean, the Algerian one is the opposite of subsidized, whatever it is, whatever that word is. Like,
I don't know.
It's like because we're the national carrier, we're going to charge you more. Yeah.
I tell you what though, like they've still got that element of. Like the flight to Tunisia was really nice. The plane seemed to be quite a new one. There was like USB ports in my seats. Like, how is this possible? But no, I know that that's probably normal for other.
Was it Tunisian airline? Yeah.
Yeah.
What? There are a couple. Yeah.
I think they've only got one, and then there's others that are like third party.
What's it called? Tunis or something?
Tunis Air, yeah.
Isn't there Carthage or something?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
But they still do like hot meals, which is great. What did I have? I think they gave us like couscous. They gave us a salad. They gave us a dessert. They always give you like a small little loaf of bread with some butter and cheese. Those little things, man, and that hasn't changed in like 15 years or so.
Welcoming you, warming you up to the country.
Absolutely, and you know it's a stark difference to you know when you travel British Airways or whatever, and they come with the menu and you've got to pay for a really soggy sandwich or something. Right?
So this wasn't. It's not like budget airline. This is like proper. Even though it's a short trip. Yeah.
Even as a short trip, this is standard fare for them. They'll, you know, everybody eats this. I don't know about first class and business class. I've never obviously traveled like that, but yeah, everybody eats. You know, so
okay,
that was quite good. Alhamdulillah, and I'm glad that hasn't changed. It's been the same way all my life that I can remember.
So you went just you, yeah? I had it in my head. You went with the family.
No, I did. I went. When I say I went, just me. My mum and my sisters came with me, and they're still there now. Okay. But in the sense of what I meant was like me going to move there is a trial for me, my wife, and my kids.
Oh, and they weren't there. Got you.
My mum and my sisters would, you know, I don't think they've got plans to essentially move there for good. But yeah, so there was still that element of though, like loaning it out because you are that one kind of you're the one male sort of guardian, aren't you? And you know, my dad's not there, so had to see how that would be. But like I said, you know, subhanAllah, my biggest lesson from it all is just having that tawakkul and having an open mind for Allah's guidance. Like you should, the way I see it is like you make a decision, you pray your istikhara, you make a decision, you embark on that decision, and you kind of see how things go, you know. And I know that I went with an open heart and an open mind to any sign that would avert me from this decision for the sake of not just myself, but also for my family, you know. And I didn't necessarily feel any sort of aversion. And although there were a few challenges, like I mentioned in the last episode about transport and stuff, those are things you plan for, you know. Maybe I should work towards trying to purchase a vehicle there or those kind of things. And, you know, I think my only hesitancy about speaking about it is, you know, speaking about it so confidently now and then in a year's time, still being in the UK and trying to like brush that topic under the rug because I never followed through with it, you know. So they do say, you know, if you've got plans, you know, keep them quite secret. But at the same time, I think Mind Heist has always been working up towards this point because, you know, yourself, I mean, you've obviously kind of, well, I suppose you never necessarily cemented yourself in the UK anyway, but you've got access to live in the UK and you choose not to. So that's one benefit, isn't it? And then obviously you've got folks like Kaya, for example, who was on last episode, who've definitely actively made that choice. And there's a lot of people around us who are actively making those choices.
Sharif in a different way.
Yes, Sharif was like, I'm bringing the Muslim world to me, to the outback. No, yeah. So there's that element of it. But no, yeah. Going back to some of that discussion we had last episode, like, yeah, I did have a few sort of comments online in regards to why Tunisia out of all the countries, and I'll bring it up again, just about how some people were saying, oh, it's the most un-Islamic Muslim country they could think of, for example, most Western Muslim country they could think of, and why would you choose there, and blah blah blah. And you know, ultimately, without, you know, it's quite obvious that I'm going to Tunisia because I'm Tunisian, because that's where I've got some sort of foundation ready there. However, would I go to Tunisia? Would I pick Tunisia if I didn't have those attachments? Probably not. You know? But I still rank Tunisia better than England in terms of Islam. And it's interesting because, like we said last episode, maybe when I was younger, I might have not said that, because Kaya kind of said, oh, some people say that England's more Islamic in some ways than, you know. But the older I get, the more I backtrack on these kind of controversial opinions I may have had when I started practicing, and I've been thinking about that a lot. Yesterday I was at the masjid, and I was just sat thinking about how I used to think when I started practicing about a lot of different things, and how black and white everything seemed when I started practicing, and how I couldn't fathom that there would ever be anything more than this black and white approach I had, and that anybody who took another approach was just washing away the deen, or, do you know what I mean? Things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm really hoping that it's not me washing down my belief. I don't think that's the case, but it's definitely that kind of maturing and understanding the complexities of different situations. You know, what do you think?
You know, I'm in a couple of these Telegram groups, and most of the people in these groups are like young guys. You know, like I don't know, let's say sub 25, but probably a lot of them are more like 18, 19, 20. So I kind of just lurk and I observe. Yeah. And yeah, bro, like, wow, it's very black and white. It's very just like, kind of like there's only one way of going about anything, or there's only one side to this, or there's like one guy, for example, yeah. This is not even to do with like fiqh or anything. Like fiqh is a whole like much worse situation. But one guy was like, randomly, he just wrote in the chat, he's like, by the way, guys, you know, if you're going to take supplements and stuff like this, you should probably consult a doctor, because I overdosed on vitamin this and that, and you know, and I was like lacking sleep, and that's why I went to the doctor, and then I found out, oh, I've been taking too much and this and that, yeah. So he just said that, yeah. And then this guy replies to him and says, no, you should, the doctor's the last person you should consult. You should only ever go to a naturopath or whatever, right? So, look, there are times when I would not listen to a doctor, right? But you see how the guy, like, what he's saying is so black and white, like in every situation, never go doctor, right?
Yeah.
Only go this, right? It's like very like just one way, right? Then I had to reply. Usually I'm just lurking. No, I just said like, look, bro, like it's not simple as that. There are situations where you would go doctor, but there are also situations where, yeah, I agree with you. You might not listen to a doctor, but you can't say it's for every situation. Don't be extreme. That's what I said. Then another guy comes from nowhere and he's like, yeah, bro, definitely don't go to a doctor. The Prophet ﷺ just, what did he say? I'll bring it up now because it was like just now in the chat. He said, wrong one. Here, yeah. So he said, a herbalist is enough. No need to go to a medical science doctor. That's the sunnah. So now he's like saying it's the sunnah, bro. Like he's talking on behalf of the Prophet ﷺ. And that's a big deal, bro, actually. Like,
but
think about that.
Shows you, then the ease of saying such definitive statements.
Yeah, like to say something is the sunnah, as far as I understand, that's like a very big deal. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man kadhaba anni muta'ammidan falyatabawa maq'adahu min an-nar." Yeah, whoever lies about me intentionally, then let him prepare his seat in the hellfire.
You know what? That reminds me, and I'll bring it up briefly without going into too much detail because it's one of those current things that's going on. But there was this whole issue that we spoke about privately about Mufti Menk attending.
He said it.
I'll say it.
Yeah.
The Mufti Menk attending an
Iftar.
iftar event that's been hosted in the UAE, where the organisers have invited lots of different people from different faiths, as well as loads and loads of Muslims. And obviously there was a picture taken of him next to a particular rabbi who is apparently quite a active Zionist, and etc., etc. And obviously everyone framed that in different ways. Mufti Menk came out with his explanation as to the situation. I personally thought that was a reasonable explanation. It makes sense to me. Some people weren't too happy about their explanation, let alone him being there. Whatever, each to their own. Either way, for me, my position was initially, well, Mufti Menk, I've never known Mufti Menk to be a liar, so I'll just assume that what he's saying is correct. Like, I'll just assume that's fine. That's his excuse, and that makes sense to me. Other people found it very easy to say, no, he's lying. There's no way that he didn't know who was going to be there. He's lying, as if he's got a reputation of lying, So it's because you can't fathom somebody making a mistake or not, accepting that particular issue, or whatever, or you've inadvertently raised somebody's celebrity rank so high that you've put them beyond the human mistake. I think that's also another thing. People can't fathom that somebody of his popularity and his height and his organization and his team or whatever can make such a basic mistake as not knowing who's going to be at a particular event. But it reminded me of maybe the exact same event that I was invited to a couple of weeks ago, but I had COVID, so I couldn't go. I didn't check who was going. I got an event for some iftar that was hosted by. It wasn't until now that I realized it wasn't. I don't think it was even organized by like Muslims. It was organized by an interfaith society dialogue thing. But because I got the invite, I just assumed it was Muslims and it was local, so I thought, I'll go. I would have attended, and the same sort of situation can happen to me. But anyway, that's not my thing. What I wanted to draw attention to is, yes, I tweeted something about like maybe we should, if you can't have Husn then about someone like Mufti Menk, then who do you have Husn anyone at all, right? And somebody said to me, people who defend Mufti Menk deserve a special place in hell. And I was like, that escalated quickly. This is Ramadan, and you've reserved my spot in hell for what?
Wait.
Or something like that.
What about the hadith of like, what was it? Whoever defends the honor of a Muslim. No, the Muslim is the one who the Muslim's honor is safe from his tongue and hands or whatever.
This is it. And they were so definitive. They said something like, whoever defends him deserves a special place in hell. That's it. That's the tweet. That's what they wrote. And I was just like, okay. But it was not that I'm scared that I'm going to go to hell for defending somebody like that. That's not what I'm scared about. I'm more scared about how easy it was for somebody to say that.
Yeah.
And
be so certain about it.
Be so certain about it, exactly. And what other mess they can get themselves into. through just speaking out of turn, and then it makes me think, like, how many things have we said, not even just on the podcast, but just in general, historically, that we've forgotten about completely, and it just started making me repent for things that I've forgotten about. Like, and I still don't remember. Like I'm saying, when I make the dua of istighfar, I'm saying, Ya Allah, forgive me for the things that I've even forgotten about.
Yes.
Because looking at the way these guys act, I know that I was probably not far off from that kind of thinking when I started practicing, and I will never forgive myself. I mean, inshallah, Rabbi forgives me, but I will never forget when I first started practicing, akhi, and I remember turning to my mum and my dad, who were sitting in the lounge. I'd started reading this book on death, and I'd started learning all these new things about death and how powerful it was and how I need to fix up and stuff. And I remember turning to my parents, and I remember literally shouting at them about how upset I was that they didn't teach me these things, even though I know that if they did teach me those things before I was practicing, I probably would have just brushed it off and not listened. My mum had her own approach with me, and alhamdulillah, it worked. And my dad, obviously, he had other priorities in that sense, and then he started really trying to take the deen seriously in the last few years. So, but I can't, I can't shake that feeling of guilt, of turning, as if in that moment of starting to learn about the deen in like a week, I decided that I was better than them and enough to shout to them about this and that, right? And that regret has followed on into all of my dealings with people when I started those first few years when I started practicing, of how maybe tough I was on people, tough I was on my own ummah, tough I was on my own communities, tough on people for some quite straightforward things like the beard or music or whatever it is, whatever it is. And it's only now that I've grown up that I've realized the complexities and nuances, not just of the fiqh, but also of people's circumstances. People's circumstances are not black and white, just like mine. So and rulings change based on people's circumstances. And it reminds me of that tradition of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in relation to the two males that came to him asking if they could kiss their wife in Ramadan while they were fasting, and for one male he said that it's impermissible for him to, and the other male he said it's fine, and that's because of their circumstances being different. One was much younger and his sexual desire was a lot higher, the other was quite old and his sexual desire was quite low. So the risk of them breaking their fast, things leading to another, was lower for one than it was for the other. And it's just that assessment of somebody's circumstances. And I think it's really easy early on to go on Islam Q&A or any website and be like, right, that's it, that's the fatwa, and just start giving that to everyone, when actually...
I think the problem is not... Like, obviously, there is that problem of misunderstanding the actual fiqh or the rulings and the differences, the different opinions, for example, That's like... I feel like that's like less of the problem maybe these days. Today, it's more like just lack of emotional intelligence, lack of understanding of people being at different places in the world, in a culture, in their iman journey and everything. Like, just people is different, man. And we started this talking about when you're younger, you're a certain way and this and that. And I definitely see that same thing in me, where just as I got older, I guess you get more information, which gives you more context, which gives you more nuance. Maybe that's kind of it, right? Like, it's like the same when you're like trying to analyze data. If you have a small amount of data, you easily get it wrong. Right? You can't, because it's like, okay, you've got like, let's say you do a survey of 5 people, right? And 4 of them said one thing. And so you think, oh yeah, that's what everyone thinks, right? But if you just surveyed 50 more people, you'll find that those 4 were the only ones who had that view. Right? So that's, a bit of understanding of statistics helps with those kind of things. But when you're 20 compared to when you're 28, you're gonna have so much more data, and therefore your conclusions, your conclusions are gonna be more statistically significant, right? Have more information with which to draw conclusions. One thing I think that, I don't know, bro, I don't put this down to me like developing myself in any way. I just think I'm a bit laid back, and therefore I have at some point in time, I just had this attitude or developed this attitude where it's like, okay, like I guess XYZ, right? So for example, Mufti Menk in this case, I guess he thought that was the best thing. Like, I don't know, like more of a like, I don't know kind of thing, right? Rather than having like so much certainty and this and that. Like, by the way, yeah, I don't buy his explanation.
All right.
But what I do buy, and I have no reason to question, is that he thought it's the right thing to do. You get it? And you see, what I just said now is quite nuanced for people that might be 18, right? Depending on the person. But it's also basic, I think, right? But yeah, I just think over time, you get more information, more context, more nuance, and you're able to say like, I'm right and that's right at the same time.
And this is it. And to bounce off what you've just said, it just reminded me, there was the first person to disagree with me on my tweet, or whatever it was quite polite and gave quite a detailed response. And because everyone else that came afterwards, well, not everyone, but a lot of people that came afterwards were very hostile and very like we gave the example, I felt that need to go back to the first person, DM him and tell him, hey, I know you disagree with me and maybe I disagree with you, but you know what, I value your argument and I appreciate that. And he was really happy about that, and we kind of kept the brotherhood going. And just like now, like I disagree. I think that his explanation made enough sense for me to actually put that whole situation into context. But that doesn't affect me in your relationship at all, and we can move on from that. It's fine, and this is water off a duck's back. It doesn't affect the rest of us in any way, because if we were happy with it, nothing's changed in the world. If we were angry with it, nothing's changed in the world. We aren't in any positions of authority or power to even influence change like that.
I think the reason that, for example, like I might get upset and like this and that because you think differently to me, is probably from a lack of confidence. And again, confidence is something that usually it grows as you get older, right? And so if you're 19, you're lacking confidence, and your opinion, which you like, your opinion is you, right? That's how a lot of us think of it. Our opinion is me. So if you're saying my opinion is wrong, you're saying I'm wrong. I'm lacking confidence, so I'm going to lash out to defend my ego and myself and preserve like my feeling pride about myself. So that's, or could be a factor as well, like lacking confidence, basically.
No, absolutely. I think it's just easy for people online to pick the most sensationalist and aggressive stance on stuff as well. Yeah. Because I think what I don't like a lot of the time is just the assumption of malicious intent behind people's mistakes or poor decisions or whatever. I think
intent is different to bad action.
Yeah, and that's what it is. I think unless you can establish a malicious intent, you should really, you can advise and you can highlight a mistake, but to then go even further and say, no, they absolutely know what they're doing and they're doing it on purpose and they're evil for doing so. You're getting into murky territory there for me. Yeah. Unless someone forthright comes out and says, I'm doing this and this is why I'm doing it and this is why I think it should be done. Yeah. And even then, you may have grounds to disagree, but then you could also see their reasoning, and that's a different sort of story. And I'm not going to bring up I'm not going to bring up another sort of thing that we spoke about in private, but it was a very controversial opinion in relation to like normalization and stuff with Israel that we saw. And actually, when I looked at it and I kind of tried to assess it, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. No way would the majority of Muslims ever accept this, but that definitely makes a lot of sense, So it's interesting to see, because it does inform how you carry yourself when these kind of issues do face you in the wide world, so to speak. Because being part of the Ummah, you then get angry for the sake of the Ummah, or you get upset for the sake of the Ummah, or you do good for the sake of the Ummah. Like, you are part of the Ummah. The Ummah doesn't have a reaction unless you yourself have a reaction, and you guide that as well, even if it's just on a minuscule level. I think that's why sometimes, because some people would argue, you're wasting your time with this sort of stuff. You should just keep it moving. And yeah, you could say that, but you are part of the Ummah, and the Ummah is you. So however you react to these issues is a reflection of the Ummah at large. Not necessarily saying that the whole Ummah is going to react the same way as you, but that tiny percentage that you represent, you're responsible for. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's the way you have to see yourself.
I wonder if we have to just accept that people of a certain age are going to always be like that.
Well, you don't. That's another trap that we've spoken about before on Mind Heist, is that your assumption a lot of the time is you see these little profile pictures and you see these names and you see these kunyas or whatever it is, and you don't actually see the age. Now, if everybody's profile had their picture, their name, and their age on it for every single social media, you might start assessing posts, comments, opinions very differently. And you know what? It's funny because the person that made that controversial opinion that we just spoke about, in their group chat, somebody replied in the most aggressive sort of way and complete disagreement, blah, blah, blah. And he was asked, "Oh, how old are you, brother?" And he refused to give his age.
That
Refused.
says
So then
it all.
From that point onwards, nobody wanted to take him seriously because he wouldn't even give a basic response to how old he was.
Yeah.
And it does make me think, like, you know, I would probably, and this is no disrespect to someone who's young. Young people can give
But we're still young, are we not?
Yeah, but not as young as when I was when I started
younger.
practicing, you know. And, you know, a 15, 16-year-old that's given a particular opinion about a matter who has nothing to lose and doesn't understand the concept of loss as well. That's another thing. And I think that's the biggest change that can impact an individual. My mother used to say that my dad, when he was younger, before he had kids, was so politically active that he'd be at protests and all sorts when he was younger. Like, he was just living life on the edge, didn't really care. And then she said, as soon as he had kids, he became like a political mouse, so to speak. Like, he wouldn't get involved in politics at all on an overt level. He never wanted to like stick his head up at anything because he would see these stories of obviously people getting, you know, imprisoned or whatever, and their kids then growing up without anybody and all of this stuff. And he, as he got older, this is my mum's obviously point of view in terms of my dad, he became a lot more reserved in those fields because he didn't want to ruin his family, because that was his immediate responsibility, was to try and protect his family.
He had something to lose. Yeah.
Something to lose. And I'm not saying of course I admire people that speak up for truth and justice despite having so much to lose. But at the same time, you have to weigh the consequences of your actions. How much change am I going to make just going and throwing my life away for some crazy opinion or idea or political change I want to make, whatever it is? You've got to assess the risks. And what more benefit could you have in the long term? Probably a lot more if you can raise a good family.
Yeah. I mean, we've got to balance these things out, because we kind of hold seemingly contradictory opinions on it. Because on one hand, we're like, the Prophet ﷺ didn't get wahi till he was 40, and 40 is the age of like maturity, and if you're older, then you're going to have like better opinions, more nuanced. At the same time, we like praise like Mohamed al-Fatih, who like conquered Istanbul at 19 or whatever. So we've got to find reconcile those things. And I think the reconciliation is that, firstly, younger people, we need to get rid of this whole like delayed adulthood thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you're working and you're like in the real world from age 14, 15, whatever it is, you're going to have, again, more information, more context, and therefore more nuance by the time you're like 19, 20. Yeah. Secondly, is we need like mentorship and mixing with older people in general, which, and it seemed like, I don't know what it was like before, but there is, for some people, for some kids, like, for example, when I was 16, that kind of age, like, how many men like older than me did I mix with? Very little. Just my teachers in school, which, did I really mix with them? It was more just like being instructed, right? And then my dad, yes, I spent time with dad, but I feel like it was limited in terms of, could have been more, you know, could have like showed me more places, could have taken me out to meet his friends and see how they act. And, you know, these kind of things would have probably helped me. So those kind of, I think that's how we kind of reconcile it, right? It's like the mentorship element or the role model element, mixing with older people, and then also like getting rid of the delayed teenage years or whatever you call it.
It's incredible how it's actually often the simplest answer, which we dismiss as a problem, which is just the simple respect for elders, which just doesn't exist, because unless that elder is of your same opinion, then you're not going to respect him, you know. And I think a lot of that, I saw a lot of that with this ELM controversy that occurred recently. I don't know if you kind of caught on to that.
Yeah. Didn't you send it to me? Someone sent it.
I might have done, but it was essentially the Imam of the Masjid at ELM came out and was advising men and
ELM
women,
being East London Mosque.
East London Mosque, advising men and women about certain etiquettes about attending the masjid for tarawih, etc. And he initially started, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I remember, he initially started advising the brothers not to hang out in front of the sisters' entrance, and if you've got mothers and wives and sisters that you're waiting for, then give them a ring and meet them somewhere else. Don't just hover out there because you're making women feel uncomfortable, and you shouldn't be staring, and you should be lowering your gaze, etc. And then he also advises sisters, if you're coming to the masjid to pray tarawih, as a nafil, so to speak, you should be dressed appropriately, and you should be following the sharia and not compromise your sharia, your obedience to Allah in the sense by dressing immodestly or whatever. And then he said the final note was, and if you can't do that, then you shouldn't come to the masjid. If you can't dress appropriately for the masjid, you shouldn't come. And that's the last bit I think that people just took absolute offense to. It's like, how can you tell people not to come and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, have you never been told off by somebody before? That was my opinion of it. It was like, this is an elder. His beard is white. You can see clearly from the video.
Bro, he's been there for a long time, man.
What is it?
Sheikh
and it's
Abdul
just
Qayyum,
I didn't know his name, but there you go. And it's just like, you've never been told off by someone. I've never been told off by an older person like that, especially that age. And then been like, why do you say that? You can't say that. It's like, no, you just keep it moving. You take the advice. Clearly, you can see the advice has come from a good place. Clearly, he's talking about the Sharia here. You take it and you keep it moving. You don't start saying, oh, he should have said this and this would have been better if he said this. Like, no, that, as far as I was brought up, like when my granddad or my grandparents, whatever, would say something, or anyone, I'd take it on board and keep it moving. At least I'd like to think that's what I do. So that kind of highlighted to me that, we still have a long way to go. But that's the society that we were raised in. That's, you put on any sort of show, any sort of movie, any sort of cartoon, it's always about the kids going against the parents' wishes or going against the adults.
Yeah.
Going through their own adventure in defiance of their parents and adults just to prove their parents and adults wrong at the end.
Well, this is one of the signs of the times, I think, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The only actual hadith that comes to mind is about how young people become very wealthy, right? There is the other one, of course, of the mistress? No. The slave girl giving birth to her mistress, that whole thing.
Something like that. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I've not actually gone and read a certain explanation, but just what's in my head, and this might be remnants of Arrivals or something. Yeah, but it's basically the daughter treats her mother like a slave by how she treats her and stuff. But yeah, it's a young person's world right now.
Absolutely.
Because now wisdom or maybe even experience, connections, even these things are less important than before, and just being able to use technology can get you so far, right? So young people are able to leapfrog people, and that's why obviously we grew up in that time. That's literally our time. It's the time of Zuckerberg was I feel like he was 29 when he became a billionaire or something. Now maybe you might see him as a bit of an older guy. Maybe he's only 40 or something now, even now, yeah. But yeah, he was one of those young, rich, one of those new tech kind of billionaires. You got the Travis Kalanick, the Uber founder. Again, he wasn't that young, but he's I think he was under 40. And so it's just this whole thing of we're the Silicon Valley guys. We wear the hoodies and we're billionaires. We dropped out of uni. It's
that delayed. It's
the new rage.
It's the delaying of the responsibilities, So that ability to delay any responsibilities, and by that way I mean marriage and kids and your own household and whatever it is. Delaying that means that you get the same level, if not more, income without having to expend it on everyone. You can just keep reinvesting it in yourself, and that's probably how they're getting. You've got this generations of people that are able to either invest in themselves or just spend on themselves perpetually because they've got no other responsibilities to cover.
On a smaller scale, you've got the guy he's gone off his job, whatever, and like you said, he's staying single, he's saving a lot of money, maybe he's even living with his parents, and that money he like put into Bitcoin, for example. And now he's one of those Bitcoin millionaire kind of people. I'm sure there's quite a few like that, to be honest. Jumped on the NFT project, jumped on Dogecoin, like there's not an insignificant number of these people,
Yeah, and I suppose that tech gives you more access, doesn't it?
Yeah. But even, bro, it definitely seeped into the Dawa. I remember some of these Dawa YouTubers, really like talking about shuyukh, like ulama, who are like the age of their dad. And it's like, look, yeah, if I believe that guy was mubtadi'ah, like you said, yeah, or you believe he's so like astray, he's leading people astray, I can't bring myself to talk about him like that. He's like my dad. He could be my dad. I just couldn't do it, and that's why I don't believe that when they're talking like that about these shuyukh in the videos, they're not doing that because of their zeal for the haqq. They're doing it because it's like the story, at least I tell, is that we're the young guys, we're on the Salafiyah, we know the truth, and you guys are old school, you've been following like these madahib, and like, what the hell is that? And it's like, we like know the truth kind of thing. It's a little bit of that flavor of like, yeah, the youth know better than you kind of thing.
I think it's all growth, bro. I think it's growth, and the gift and the curse of this kind of these platforms is that we are witnessing people's growth. Because if you look at anyone that makes videos, even myself, right? And I don't ever consider that I made videos that were too controversial, but try and go like 7 years into that history, you'll find all those videos deleted. Everyone I speak to that's been in the dawah, any video that's like more than 5 years old, they feel awkward about it and they want it deleted. I've been sat with people, bro, kid you not, that are in the dawah, they've done dawah videos, and they're desperately trying to get videos deleted that they can't, and they're still up there, and someone else might own the channel, whatever it is.
They monetize that thing.
Well, that's it. And I've got, I did videos for Muslim Youth Movement, and despite the fact that, ours was very clear, like basic.
Yeah, it's pretty safe, yeah.
Yeah, pretty safe stuff. Even I requested a lot of those to be deleted. I think there might be one up or maybe nothing. I don't know. But I was just like, all right, get rid of it, because even if, number one, I can't stand watching myself again, especially if I was, start searching. I know where your eyes are going. Number one, I can't stand it. Number two, I can't go through all those videos and then confirm that everything I said was 100% legit. So I'd rather it not be there at all, let alone for the people that actively, that was their bread and butter for God knows how many years. So just like those people producing that kind of content now, give it another 5, 6, 7 years, they might look back and go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Let me get rid of that. So we're just witnessing people's mistakes or people's sort of life play out in public. Because there's so many things that we look back on. Like my wife, may Allah bless her, she came across like some message that I sent her when we first got married, right? And she was like, "Oh my God, look what I just found. This is like 5 or 6 years ago." And she goes, "Yeah, read it." And I was like, "There is no way I'm reading that." I just didn't even want to read it, bro. And it's just because it's been so long. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, that's a different person. I've grown now. I'm a different. Do you know what I mean? So so it could be.
It's funny, right? Like how it's so uncomfortable.
It is, and that makes me think like, we are always living in our future self's regret, So we have to just be mindful not to do ourselves a disservice in the future too much. And I'm sure you'll be like that with the Seerah Masters. We'll be like that with Mind Heist, I'm sure.
Well, no doubt. I've hidden a lot of videos.
There you go.
No doubt, but I always had this at the back of my head. Like when I was making videos, I was thinking like, okay, in 5 years, this is still going to be here. Are you going to be proud of it? Kind of thing, right? Like I was kind of conscious of that. So honestly, there's no bad videos I can think about. There's some videos that are cringy, definitely, that I've hidden. But now as someone older, now like I just put a video out a few hours ago, actually, a new one. Like, I feel like, when you're like older, right? You're not like 20 or 18 or whatever. It's like safer, you kind of, you ask yourself, am I confident that this is correct and this is the right way to do it? Yes. Okay. And like we have more data to pull from, like I've said. So yeah, inshallah, it's safe. But the problem is like what you're saying, when someone is because you grow in terms of whatever it is, your mindset, even physically, even whatever, you grow rapidly the younger you are. So you eventually, when you're like 26 or whatever, you kind of hit this a bit of a plateau where it's like, okay, my opinions are not changing as much now. So it's safer at that point, I think.
Yeah, and you're easily influenced. And I know they say that, young people are impressionable, but there's something biological about that. There's something like your brain hasn't fully formed because I mentioned it before on my night.
Bro,
No, well,
I
don't
searched,
YouTube anything.
I searched Muslim youth movement. Yeah.
Yeah,
You'll be happy to know there's not one video with you in it.
brilliant.
But, oh, I just found one now.
Oh no! That's what I'm trying to get rid of that.
I had to go a long way down to find it though.
Thing is that, see, like that channel, for example, it's gone through so many different hands that the last person who had access to it doesn't even do dawah videos anymore that we don't think of.
Yeah.
But just trying to chase them up to get the password and stuff is impossible. And I don't think they even know the password. Otherwise, things would have been deleted because there's other people that are in those videos that want their videos deleted.
Bro, the one who's suffering is Musa.
Well, this is it.
Bro, like the number 2 result is Musa, yeah, looking mashallah very young, and the title is the Zina series. Oh, poor guy, man.
But this is it, man. SubhanAllah. So you've got to be careful. I mean, when I was young and doing that sort of stuff, it was good. It was more. It benefited me more than it benefited.
Yeah,
I think maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely remember getting people coming up to me in the street and stuff, especially when I'd go to London and saying, "Oh, your videos really helped me," blah blah blah. But yeah, it was early days back then, wasn't it? And there weren't the rules and regs that you have nowadays. Clickbait definitely wasn't necessarily as wild as it is now. You used to have a video, do a topic, and that would be it, and people just watched it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Bro, we went off topic, man. Let's go back to Tunisia, bro. So you got Tunisian passport, yeah?
I sure do. God, you've just reminded me. I was doing all this sort of paperwork for that yesterday, trying to get my son registered and all this stuff. And it's like, you got an embassy in England. Why is everything in French? Like, we're in England. Come on.
Like surely Arabic or English. Yeah.
They have a lot of them are Arabic. There's Arabic and French, but then certain little things that you just wouldn't be 100% sure of, and you're just like, am I writing the right thing here? So I'll tell you what was a godsend. Google Translate's got an app.
Yeah, it's very
good. Take a photo. You can download the whole language package, so it's always there when you're offline. And then you can just take a photo or hover your phone over something. And I don't use it all the time, but I use it for words.
In Turkey, that is a must.
Oh, I can imagine. This is it. So if anyone doesn't do that, please help yourself. Because it always helps with words I've never seen before in Arabic. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then I need to give me some sort of idea. So there's that.
So your kids don't have the passport yet?
No, Suleiman does. It's just Ilyas, but he was born during COVID and everything was shut down. So the past sort of 2 years, I was never able to get around to doing it. But now it's like, okay, I should do it now. And, I was always hoping that maybe my dad would go with me, but he just kept deteriorating, miskin. So, and that was another thing. It was like, how am I going to be able to deal with all this sort of paperwork stuff in Tunisia? And like I did some interesting things. Like I went to bailiffs or whatever they're called to try and get somebody out of a property, and I had to register stuff in terms of property deeds and trying to get debts off of a deed and all this sort of interesting stuff, like some complicated things. You know what I mean? It's not as simple as like, oh, I don't know, what's a simple government thing? Everything's complicated these days.
Getting a birth certificate.
You can imagine the bureaucracy of it all, especially considering that this country isn't necessarily even alerted through and through to the passing of my dad, So it was interesting to see people's aversion to doing anything when they found out that my dad had died, even though they technically don't know because I haven't actually done that process. That process hasn't been formalized yet. For example, you could go to my dad's bank and you could say, right, my dad passed away, but I need to do this and this and this. And I've still got a, they call it a tawqid. So it's I've got a written free pass to cover that.
Thingy of attorney, power of attorney.
Yeah, that's kind of thing, even when he was alive. And they're like, oh, but he's not here now, so you can't do this. I'm like, but you didn't know that he's not here. I've just told you that. You've got nothing formal to say that he's not here. You're just going to take my word of it. Okay. But anyway, bureaucracy, obviously. My uncle actually, subhanAllah, he said to me when I was there, I don't know how true this is, but he said that Tunisia is so bureaucratic that the factories that produce paper ran out of paper. Then the country stopped. He was just
That's
like,
a good myth, bro. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but as a myth, like that's sick, one.
Bro, he was adamant, bro, and I was just like, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because every single day I was there, I was going out with my folder, with my paperwork.
Yeah.
Back and forth. And it's never all in one place. It's like, okay, you got to go to this town for this, and you got to go to that town for this, and you got to go to that town for this, and then sometimes you got to go to the capital for this. And it's like, all right. And when you don't have a car, bro, it's exhausting.
Bro, easily you spend, like, in these countries, I would imagine, like, in a year, like 365 days. I don't know, bro. It depends on what you're doing, but you could spend, like, a month of the year doing this stuff.
It's the come back next week culture, bro. That's all it is.
Exactly. So you want to do one thing, yeah? Let's say you need to go to the place 3 times, right? That's 3 days gone, right? Because easily it's like waiting takes long, getting there takes long. So 3 days gone, yeah?
Yeah.
But then each of those 3 times, it's like come back tomorrow. So then it becomes 6.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like 6 days gone for to get one thing done.
And it goes back to what we were saying about the queuing process. Like if there's no queuing, so you kind of have to battle people anyway. And then it makes you think like, how do people even go and pray, bro? Like how do they, because they're so busy waiting for this. And also all of this is in a weekday. So how do you even work? Because what point do you go and do
exactly. You miss all those days of work or whatever. Yeah.
So I was fortunate that I took time off to go there and do this. But then it made me think. Because I went past one town, bro. Well, it's basically the county capital of a particular county, and there was this incredibly large queue just for like a post office or something. And I was just like, and when I say queue, I mean like it was a queue until it got to the doors where it became a mob. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like I was just thinking, as I walked past, I was like, subhanAllah, if I was in that position, I would be so stressed out that I can't, like, what point do I pray Dhuhr? You know what I mean? Because I'm going to be here all day. Waiting here.
And you'll miss your place,
Yeah, I'd miss my place. Nothing would ever get done. But things like that, man. But subhanAllah, at the same time, despite all of that, I still felt, a level of comfort and a level of acceptance from people and a level of hospitality from people. Like 99%, I can't remember anyone really that I actually went, I finally got to the desk and I went and they were like, really off with me or like dismissive or whatever. They might give me bad news, but they would try and say, okay, this is what you need to do. This is how I can help you next time. Bring this, etc., etc. And they were sympathetic, obviously, to the situation. And I think that's what was nice. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it's just a bias because my father died and everyone was being nice to me because my father died and they were giving me condolences. But I do think, there was definitely part of me that was like, I don't know, maybe it's because of what I represent, having the beard and stuff. Maybe they just they talk to you like that, But though, if you pay attention to subhanAllah, people are generally nice people, And I think the default is people are nice, and I think that's what I wanted to think better of my people for, because the Ummah in general, I think, because we default to assuming that people are going to be offish or people are going to be nasty, and I don't know where that comes from, really. I don't know where that comes from.
I think, in the Arab world, for example, I think everyone's nice, bro. They're not competent, but they're nice. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. It's like, look, they're not organized. There's no process in place. They don't really do stuff with ihsan, but they are nice.
I kind of reconciled something in my head that stopped me worrying. For anyone that has stuff like this going on abroad, I realized, like, just as long as it takes for me to let them know things, it also takes probably longer for them to come after me if I do something wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Well, they might not bother,
Yeah, it's like in the same way that it takes ages for things to work for you, it could also probably take a long time for things to work against you. So like I was thinking like, oh, I need to pay taxes for this building and that thing that my dad owes. And I was like, well, look how long it's taking for me to do this one basic thing. It's going to take them forever to realize, X, Y, Z, and they have to chase me and let them find me or whatever. So theoretically, it could take as long as it does. Like, alhamdulillah, as long as I'm eating and drinking, that's the main thing, and that's all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
So don't worry too much about the long.
You can see how that would affect the whole culture as well. The fact that you're going to take like 30 days a year out to just do paperwork. Yeah.
I mean, I went
that
to
shows
like
that it's going to be a more relaxed culture.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows like things aren't getting done that quickly. So it's like employers are going to be like, oh yeah, you have to do paperwork. Okay, of course you're not going to work, right?
First day I got there, I went to this particular idara, government building, whatever, and I was like, right, I need to get this particular document. As I got to the door, they were shut. I was like, oh, why are they shut? And it was a Friday, so they don't open until 2:00 in the afternoon. I was like, okay, well that's 30 minutes away, so I'll wait. Waited, got there, right. I did a bit of jostling in the queue in the desk, but it was fine. It was pretty much empty. And then I was like, okay, I need this particular piece of paper, which is very easy. You just go on the record and print it out. That's all it is. Here's my ID card. This is who I am. I'm not lying. Okay, cool. Come back next week for it. I was like, why? You could just print it now. There's a printer behind you. No, that's just the way the people that do it. That's just the way. Here's a receipt. Come back next week. Right. So I waited. I think it was 4 days, they said. So I waited for 4 days, came back on that fourth day, same time. They're like, oh, you come today. No, look, they do it in the afternoon. So you need to come tomorrow. And you got to remember, this is like a journey, bro, that I have to make every time. And it's not like I could just call somebody up and ask them. So it's like, okay, now what do I do? Let me figure out if there's something else I can do in the meantime. And then eventually you get it. And it's like, is that it? They could have just printed that on the first day. And none of this would have had to happen. But no, they've got a policy.
Did you get into any Rashwa situations?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I can't imagine why I would need to. No. I did go and see a lawyer who I felt like was trying to get me to go down the illegal battle route that I didn't feel like was necessary. But that goes back to the like confidence of being able to challenge things. Because I think, subhanAllah, if I did actually withdraw into that kind of oh, little me from England, I don't know what I'm doing attitude, I would have just been taken advantage of, even in a positive way. Because I went to a lawyer just to ask them some questions. They're a family lawyer. They've always dealt with stuff for us before. And I'd already done a particular thing. And they were like, yeah, but you know what? You should come with me and we'll do it this way. And we'll go down this and you can do this and this. Giving me some. And then I was like, yeah, but my way still works, right? And they're like, yeah, but, want to do it properly. I was like, well, I'll just carry on with my way until I hit a dead end. Because clearly I know you want me to go down the law and order route just so that, and this was something simple. This is trying to get what is essentially a squatter out of my premises. I don't need to go to the courts for that because that would just tie me up with bills and tie me up with having to, lots of different things. So everyone's trying to make money. Yeah, they've got to live it. They've got to make a living. You've just got to be aware that, people have their own interests at heart. As on top of trying to be nice to you, people also want to get paid. So those kind of things, subhanAllah. But look, these are, I know these are very specific sort of examples I'm giving about myself. But anybody who's thinking of going to a Muslim country, they have to be prepared for this, I'm sure. You spoke about going to the Sharjah police station, for example, back when you were in UAE. I'm sure in Turkey you're going to have your own, or if not already, have your own sort of set of challenges every now and again. It could be something as just as simple as trying to rent a property. I'm sure could have its hoops that you have to jump through. It could be something as simple as trying to set up internet in your house, or pay for or set up some particular phone bill, or like you mentioned, sometimes your electricity just cuts off. How do I fix that? What happens? Like, you could have such, specific problems, try and mirror the issues that you might face in England, try and mirror them over there and see how would I solve that if I was over there? It's not as simple as just going on the internet and finding things out. In all these places, you just physically can't.
A lot of the time, if there is anything on the internet, it's wrong.
Yeah, well, they're saying it's out of date, like severely out of date.
Yeah. Because in UAE, a lot of the stuff is online, but it's just not true. Like it's old, or that's not how in practice it works.
It might do for the perimeter of Dubai, but as soon as you step out of Dubai, it's another. It's another world.
Not even. It's like, okay, to do this, bring this document. That's what it says online. When you go to the place, they're like, oh no, we just need that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember when I got married, this happened. They said to get married, you need to go to the British consulate. You need to get a paper saying you're not married, and you're not already married.
Oh yeah.
It cost a lot of money and all of that. When I actually went and got married at the court, they're like, "Oh,
that's fine.
I don't need that. It costs like £100 or something, man."
Well, at least I'd rather that than the opposite, because the opposite, and it happens all the time.
Of course, yeah.
It's like, oh, you only need this. You go all the way there, and then it's like, where's all the other stuff? Like, you never said that. And that happens to me in the embassy all the time. So then I call up to the Tunisian embassy. And
Well, that's why everyone going to any of these places, they come with every paper, every document.
Everything. You've got to.
You got to have a special briefcase, wardrobe, suitcase.
My mum was talking to me, subhanAllah, because she's trying to chase up some things while she's there. And she said she had to go to the capital for a similar thing. And, driving all the way to the capital, that's like 2-3 hours, whatever. I don't know how long it is. It takes quite a long time. But they couldn't even drive. They had to get a train. And you can imagine it's just tiring. They're women and they haven't got any men with them and whatever. They finally get there. And like this guy, apparently, this place is the only place you can get particular things for people that live abroad. And the people were just getting swatted like flies. Anyone that came up to the desk, no, you haven't brought this, leave. And like, you haven't brought this, leave. You haven't brought this. And one of the men there was like, oh, this is like the come next week country. Do you know what I mean? And apparently he got to my mum and he was just like, have you got this? And she's like, yeah. He's like, okay, but have you got this though? She's like, oh yeah, I do. And, do you know what I mean? He's basically trying to find a way he can get out of doing any work. Do you know what I mean? So stuff like that. So, and a lot of the time they don't even look at half the stuff that you bring. They just ask if you've got it or not. So
I don't know where this comes from, man. But
I don't know, man.
Once I went to Algerian embassy in London, and they were doing that whole thing. Oh, you don't have this, you don't have that. As soon as I told them I came from, the Midlands, they just changed. They're like, oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, we'll do this. Right. We'll sort it out. And that happens so often that you just, that you don't really need these documents.
Tell me about it. When I was last at the embassy, one of the guys that I was filling out a piece of paper to do all this stuff for Dad and everything. One of the guys goes, oh, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? And I told him, obviously. And then his demeanor completely changed. And then he gave me his number. And he's like, if you got any issues, just call me on my number. I don't mind what time of day it is and all this stuff. And I was just like, you've got to be joking. I've still got his number now. Bro, subhanAllah, I left the embassy, bro. I was driving back and he texted me saying that he forgot to do a particular thing and I need to write out this whole document thing. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'll do it for you next week because I'm busy now. He goes, you know what? No, I'll write it for you. You just sign it. And I was like, okay, fine.
Sick.
But there's still very much that, like, what can people do for you? Scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing. Yeah. And that's a society and a culture you're going to have to adapt to. I think that's perpetual in the Muslim world. Like, the people are the ones that are going to help you out. And like every time, bro, I would go into any building in Tunisia, my uncle would be like, oh, that's Habibi, that guy there. Don't worry, he's going to sort us out. He's so-and-so and he's related to me this and that way. And like, it's like, unfortunately, that's just the reality of the situation. Yeah. You need to develop connections. So if you're planning, maybe this is my advice at least to anyone, if you're planning to go to a Muslim country and just keep yourself sheltered away in your little sort of bubble with your family and stuff and not mix with anybody and not try and develop relationships and stuff, you might have a really hard time when you need help, when you face sort of roadblocks and stuff. So I remember my dad doing that all the time, like establishing relationships with people, like buying boxes of chocolates for people or lawyers or whatever. And I don't know if it's bribery, but it's just to have like a certain level of relationship with people.
Yeah.
I went to that lawyer, subhanAllah, and she was just like, oh, your dad, every time he come from England, he always buy me this fancy box of chocolates, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, yeah, he was a good guy. And I'm thinking, is she saying that so that is she saying that
like,
so
where's
I
my
can keep that going? Do you know what I mean? I was like, is that why she's saying that? Anyway, I'll put that to the back of my mind for now. Stuff like that, bro.
Actually, I realized that spending most of my life in the UAE, I got used to this kind of bureaucracy. And so obviously England felt like amazing, so smooth, right? Even though didn't have to do too much over there, but anything I did do is like, wow. And the same actually applied in Turkey. So Turkey is smoother, less bureaucracy than UAE in my experience. So again, like because of my experience in the UAE, I feel like, Turkey's good. Yeah. But maybe coming from UK, Turkey would seem bad. So the hot thing is like, if you are used to the easiest thing, everything seems hard, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just, at the end of the day, you could get yourself down in the dumps about it and be like, oh, this is such a roadblock. To be honest, it's a roadblock I think is worth it. Like I said to you earlier, as long as I'm eating and drinking, as long as it's straightforward. Like sometimes that backwardsness, quote unquote, of that country can actually work in your favor. You know, for example, one of the backwards things was like my dad's property that he's renting out to people. He's got, that's his business, so to speak. Typically, when somebody dies, everything would freeze, and you'd have to get, do the whole bureaucratic process of inheritance and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I just called all the tenants up, and I was like, dudes, can you like just carry on paying as normal until we get this stuff sorted out? They were like, yeah, sure. Do you know what I mean? And that was like a word of mouth, like let's just carry on that way. And obviously I give them a receipt, etc. But you can imagine if that happened in England, whatever, everyone would just stop.
Yeah.
And everything would stop, and then you'd be chasing and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's still that word of like trust between people, and if you've got a good relationship with people, off the cards, so to speak, because otherwise societies wouldn't function. Because as bureaucratic as they want to be, the majority of the place is rural, and a lot of people don't read and write, and societies, they still have to eat and drink, and they still have to do
exactly.
things.
Just gonna get on with it whichever way.
Whatever way they can. So,
and actually, I'm appreciating that in Turkey because UAE is extremely regulated place. Okay,
right.
It's a small country, and they got money, and therefore they can actually regulate like everything.
Yeah.
So that used to kind of bother me. It's like you just want to. I don't know, bro. Like imagine you want to rent out a little room, a little office to do your work, to do a little podcast. I don't know. Just for example, that you want to go do some sort of sports, or you got to get passport scanned, or all these kind of things. Turkey's less like that,
Right.
So it's kind of been refreshing for me. In terms, like there's always bad and good to it, isn't there? So like people drive kind of crazy here. At the same time though, for example, you could, if you just you need to squeeze an extra one or two people in a car, they don't really fit, like the police not going to stop you kind of thing, right? So it goes for you and against you, Actually, I didn't tell you, a couple of weeks ago, no, more like a month ago, I don't know, I went to a shooting range.
Okay.
And I was thinking, the guys I went with, I was like, bring your passport, they probably want to scan it and this and that. And actually, that was one of the reasons I was reluctant to go a while ago, because I was like, they're going to scan it, and who's going to get that information? And blah, blah. Bro, I went there. Within 3 minutes, I had a gun in my hand with a loaded gun.
We can't help it, but we grew up in that 9/11 generation, bro, where that's it. Like for us, it'd be interesting to see if that's always the case everywhere. I was definitely pleasantly surprised by the lack of anybody speaking to me or dealing with me in Tunisia. I really was, because I went there with that mental preparation of like, okay, I'm going to have issues, and I didn't have any, so it just made me think like, and it will never, I'll never forget when I was there during the last time I had issues, which was like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know, maybe longer, maybe 6 years ago. No, actually, it was like 4 years ago. And I had issues with the passport and all this sort of stuff and blah, blah, blah. And it's because I went the roundabout weird way of doing it that they thought it was suspicious. Like my dad went to try and get somebody that he knew to try and help me speed up my passport and all this stuff. And because I went around this weird way, they probably thought, why is he not just doing this the normal way? And they kind of just held my passport. But when I came back from that trip and I was in the airport, I saw this brother that came into the gate, the waiting room. And he was like all thobed up and bearded up and proper like, and speaking to all the security and blah, blah, blah. And I probably mentioned this before. And I went and spoke to him. I was like, yo, like, how are you doing this? Like, how are you like so pally with all the security and everybody knows you? And he's like, listen, the difference between you and me is that they know me and they don't know you. Do you know what I mean? You're an unknown entity to a country that can't pick and choose, can't like sift through every individual person with a beard and thobe, right? So what you need to do is establish yourself in that country. Once you're established and people know what you're about, for example, if I was to live in my village permanently, and there was some sort of question about me and my intentions, for example, they would ask around. They would ask about me.
Yeah.
What's so and so like? Oh, he's never caused any issues and blah blah blah. Comes from a good family, etc., etc. You don't start getting on people's radar until you start mixing with people that are already on the radar, or you've got a history of being a violent person or being aggressive or whatever and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's that element. So keep your head down, to anyone like thinking of going to a Muslim country and living there. Keep your head down, generally speaking. don't draw attention to yourself unnecessarily. And what I say by that is like yourself, you're not going to go on a prime time TV channel or YouTube channel and just start talking about Turkey and politics and all this stuff and how it can change and blah blah blah. You'll notice the biggest vocal people of particular countries don't even live in that country. They might be from the country.
Yeah.
Like I was following a few Tunisian reporters and journalists that are very anti and very critical. And I was like, hey, you both live in the UK, so no wonder you're so loud and proud. You're probably exiled. And a lot of the time that's the case. So, you're not going to... And number two, you're not even... That's not necessarily required of you. Why put yourself in such a hot mess? Why do that to yourself? And my dad used to say that all the time. Like he said, don't draw attention to yourself for no reason. Go there, work your whatever job it is, benefit those around you, be good to your neighbors, be good to those around you. Maybe have a couple of, local friends that are quite decent people. Do you know what I mean? That you don't suspect of anything or whatever, because you don't know how the law is going to treat you and how the authorities are going to treat you and stuff. And develop good relationships ultimately with people. And yeah, if you have to buy people gifts and presents or whatever, just to let people know what you're about. It's not about bribing them for something. I'm not advocating like, oh, I need a particular piece of paper done. Here's 50 quid. Let me slide down the table. I'm just talking in general. In the same way that you'd be good to your neighbors, but just be good to your community when you get there. Like, yeah, on Eid, go and distribute some food to everybody.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you're traveling back and forth and you can buy, I don't know, small boxes of Ferrero Rocher or whatever, people just love that. Straight away, you've established yourself as a decent person. And then they know what you're about and you've got a reputation for yourself. Because at the end of the day, and I know I'm rambling a little bit, but if you were to come to Brighton and ask the local community here, what do you know about Mohamed, for example? I'd like to think you'd hear some decent things because people know me. If I go now to Turkey where you live and you've just moved there and ask, what do you know about this guy that's just moved in? Oh, I don't know. Don't know anything about him. You know what I mean? That in and of itself already puts a weird sort of context to it. So just got to kind of step out your comfort zone a little bit and just be nice to people.
Yeah. Turkey's actually changed in the last 3 to 6 months in terms of new people coming here.
Really, yeah?
They kind of like... Officially, they said we're not accepting any new, because basically most like foreigners that move here, they come on a tourist visa,
right?
Even though it could be 1 or 2 years long, the visa, but it's called a tourist visa. Yeah. They said basically we're not giving any more tourist visas.
Oh, subhanallah.
And like the government, actually, the governing party right now, they sent a representative to this area where there's a lot of foreigners, to speak to them, and they kind of just went to a cafe and they're like, yeah, we're here, we want to discuss with you guys and stuff. And one thing they were saying is like, look, you guys are guests in our country. We've welcomed you here. You can come here. You've been staying here, but you need to like think about what are you doing for Turkey,
right?
Which makes sense, right? It's like you're just gonna come and like live here and obviously benefit from whatever's here, but like, what are you doing for Turkey? What are you gonna contribute to Turkey? And it's like what you're saying, like, what are you known for? What are you like contributing and stuff? And I'm not a good example because like I don't even speak the language, right? But that would be a good thing. That would be a good question. Like, well, you're living here, like you don't even learn the language. Like, what the hell? Yeah. At least I have the intention to learn it. Some people are like, no, I'm not really learning Turkish. Like, I get by without it, right? There's enough Arabic speakers. Like, I'm fine. I don't think that's a good attitude, Likewise, I don't believe, like, you go to the masjid and you try to, I don't know, bro. Like, let's say the imams were quite strict on the mask thing. Yeah. And then you get all these people like, no, I'm not wearing mask, this, that. It's like, you're a guest. Like, I know we're all Muslims and stuff, but it's still not your country, I just think it's different when it's not your country. Even if it was my country and I hadn't been living here and I moved back here, I would take a year or two to warm up again to the place. And then I might be like, no, we should change this. Let's do this. Blah, blah, blah. Then I might actually, rebel, if you like, to improve the country. But if it's not your country, like, you kind of always got to, be like, yeah, okay, it's your place in the end.
I wonder if that's part and parcel of like this internal superiority complex that people have by going to Muslim countries because I feel like it reminded me when like the way people treat you as well when you were younger, going to like, I don't know, Zaire or Tunis or whatever, and you're like, oh, I got the red passport and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
People treat you differently
Yeah,
because
they
of that.
treat
And
me better.
you develop this internal superiority complex because that's the way people treat you.
Yeah, that's true.
But then you then take that with you to every other Muslim country you go to until you think, oh, I can boss people about and I feel like I know what I'm doing here. And
well, I mean, the example I was giving was actually of people coming from like Egypt or Iraq or
right, okay,
not necessarily from the West. Yeah, there are some people from the West that act like that, but less so much. But yeah, I'm talking about like people from maybe the Arab world where they just want to do things the way it was in their country, but here. And, you know.
Yeah. I suppose you have to.
It's the typical immigrant issue, isn't it? It's the same thing that happened in England. Like Pakistanis, whatever, go to England from Pakistan. Some of them don't learn the language. Then the people in England, they get annoyed at that. It's the exact same happening anywhere, really. You know, the Chinese moving to Algeria, working in the construction there and stuff.
I'm interested to ask though, when he came around and said, "What are you going to do for Turkey?" Like, what did he mean? Like, what did he have in mind? Like, what is it that you're not doing that he wants everyone to do?
Yeah, he wasn't like accusing. He was just saying like, if you're going to be here, then you've got to become part of the society, if you like. I think I don't know if this was said or if it's just a guess, but you know, like, are you going to set up a business? You're going to employ people. You're going to invest. You're going to set up a charity. You're going to set up activities for the kids in the area. This kind of stuff.
Yeah. And that's you know, that reminds me of like what we said about when people were saying that, by me going to Tunisia and earning a UK wage, for example, if that was possible, I'd be exploiting the system there. And I was like, no, ideally my intention is to actually be there for good and benefit there, so my generations can benefit of my privilege, I suppose. You know what I mean? And I think sharing that privilege with everybody is important. And if there is local initiatives that you can start up, if you've got more access to capital that you can then benefit your community there with, of course, you've got to start seeing that as your responsibility and your ummah, so to speak.
And that's one thing with the UAE is I feel like it's difficult to take quote unquote ownership of living there because, as far as I understand, like, it's not easy to open a business. It's not easy to start a charity. It's not easy to start activities without lots of permissions and all that.
Right, yeah.
That's where the lack of regulation is better sometimes, isn't it? Like here, I know actually one American guy moved here. He started a charity. You can start business here, etc., as a foreigner and stuff. So that stuff is good. In UAE, it's like some of those things you can do, but it'll cost a lot of money, and some things you just can't do unless you're Emirati.
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be, like you said, a charity. Like a business is perfectly acceptable as well because you're then obviously helping people with livelihood.
Yeah.
It reminds me, like, you've got the charity aspect. Like, remember Abu Bakr Islam when he went to start the sports project, in Gambia, and look at that. Look how incredible that is, and the ability to do something like that. And not everybody has to do that level of work, but even something small. I know, like, my auntie went back home to Morocco to work on an orphanage, or she's planning to do an orphanage. I remember it's been a few years since I've asked about it, but stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying everybody has to make that level of things, but you could already go to an established location and bolster it. You could go to an established orphanage or established charity and be like, listen, I want to work with you. I can bring a bit more capital, bring a bit more insight to you guys. Like my wife, actually, she works a lot with some Algerian charities in Algeria that she knows personally, the people that work there. And she's done fundraisers in the UK for them, which are like triple what they could get from the people that are over there. Do you know what I mean? And it's the ability to benefit. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Why not? Let's close with this. What did you find? I mean, I'm guessing like in the capital, it is that liberal thing that people have people have of Tunisia, right? But like, it's only been 4 years since you went, but you're now going with that perspective of, okay, I might live here. How do you feel? How comfortable you feel about either the religiosity or just how traditional people are?
So I didn't go to the capital this time around, apart from when I flew in and out.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
But if you lived there, you probably wouldn't engage too much with the city anyway, right?
Nah, probably wouldn't. You know, I'd visit for some elements, but not necessarily to live there.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't like to anyway. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, you know, and I think for some reason, I don't know if I'd forgotten the way people were, but I was definitely reminded of how the deen is important to people, you know, at least their understanding of the deen, and that's fine. Do you understand what I mean? They may have certain things that they don't that shouldn't be done, you know, Islamically speaking, but they ascribe it to Islam. But the fact that they hold that much importance to those things means that their heart's in the right place. Like, for example, there might be something that they do that they think is part of Islam, or they think is, you know, rewardable to do when it really isn't. But the fact that they're so like passionate about that particular thing means that, well, actually, they're trying to worship Allah. They just need a bit more. This is just for the few outliers. I'm not talking about the general population.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Akhi, every conversation, and I'll say this again and again, every conversation you have with somebody, there's a remembrance of Allah in their speech. Whether it's Alhamdulillah, whether it's Barakallahu Feek, Allah Yainak, anything, okay? That is a million times better than any conversation you could ever have with some non-Muslim person, colleague that you're working with, or any shopkeeper in Tesco's or Sainsbury's, and you know other supermarkets are available. But but ultimately, that's it. And straight away, bro, just having that conversation, it's like you, for example, being, or any of us, working with non-Muslims for so long, and then you just finally come across some Muslim, and you're like, oh, assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. Just that feeling you get, right, of, oh, I recognize you, you recognize me. You know what I mean? But having that all the time, because you feel at home with these people. And then another thing is, like, I don't feel intimidated by people because of that, in the sense that, yeah, I keep hold of my belongings because you never know. But at the same time, when somebody says Assalamu alaikum and they start speaking to you, you kind of let your guard down just a little bit in a comfortable, permissible way, so to speak, because you recognize each other as this is part of the ummah. And I don't assume that this guy's going to have bad thoughts of me and I'm not going to have bad thoughts of them or whatever.
And you probably feel like, especially since you're from Tunisia, you feel like that's my brother, not just Muslim, but my brother. Like,
absolutely. And I'll tell them, and I've said this conversation that we're having now isn't exclusive to here. I've told them the exact same stuff when I'm over there. I'm like, yo, you guys don't understand how finished England is. You know, I was, subhanAllah, maybe we'll end with this, but on one of my first days there, bro, I was speaking to my uncle about England and all these things that we speak about, Mind Heist, and, you know, what they're teaching in schools and all this stuff and how it's basically finished. And we got into a taxi that had about 8 seats in it or whatever. 7-seater taxi. There was 2 women in front, so I was sat right at the back. 2 women in front. One woman was talking to this other woman about her son and how her son is hell-bent on going to Europe, and he'll do anything he can to go to Europe. And she said she would rather kill her son or something to that effect than him drowning in the ocean, because that's what he's planning to do. He's planning to basically get on a dinghy and just go, right? And she was saying how she doesn't think that Europe is worth it, and she's pretty sure that Europe's messed up anyway, and it's probably not like how it used to be, etc., etc. But her son is adamant that he's going to go over there and find work and all this stuff. And I basically, just before I got off the taxi, I basically butted into the conversation because I felt like I had to. I felt like if I could stop this guy from making a horrible mistake, maybe I should. And I literally said to her, listen, everything you said about Europe, you're right. I'm born in the UK. I'm from the UK. I could prove it. I've got my passport on me right now, like, just so that she knows it. I'm not just jumping in for no reason. You know, I said, you know, may Allah guide your son, etc. It's not what it used to be. It's so difficult now, and he's gonna, not only is he gonna have a hard time with work and stuff, he's gonna have a hard time fitting in. He's gonna have a hard time being treated and keeping on to his identity, etc., etc. At least here, he's surrounded by people that he loves and people that love him, etc. And he's surrounded by Muslims, etc., and stuff like that. So, yeah. And she was just like, "Wallahi, you spoke the truth. Wallahi, you spoke the truth." I spoke to my daughter who lives out in Europe, and I think her daughter lives in France, and she got a visa there, like, properly through a job, whatever. And she goes, my daughter says the same thing. She wants to come back, etc., etc. So just that, you know, the notion and the desire for people to still come to Europe is still very much alive. But now, then again, you've got people like us who have had enough and kind of want to get out. So
Yeah. Cool, bro. It's actually Maghrib in 10 minutes.
Enjoy.
Inshallah. Subhanakallahumma. Whoa. That shows that I'm going to break my fast now. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.